Dennis Gerrard Stephen Doherty was a Canadian singer, songwriter and musician. He was most widely known as a founding member of the 1960s musical group the Mamas and the Papas. Early career: Denny Doherty was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Doherty started his musical career in Halifax in 1956 with a band called the Hepsters. With friends Richard Sheehan, Eddie Thibodeau and Mike O'Connell, the Hepsters played at clubs in the Halifax area. The band was together for about 2 years. Sheehan recalls that they drew crowds wherever they went due to Denny's incredible voice. In 1960, at the age of 19, Doherty, along with Pat Lacroix and Richard Byrne, co-founded a folk group called the Colonials in Halifax, Nova Scotia. When they got a record deal with Columbia Records, they changed their name to the Halifax 3. The band recorded 2 LPs and had a minor hit, The Man Who Wouldn't Sing Along with Mitch, but ultimately broke up in 1963. Coincidentally, they broke up at a hotel called the Colonial in Los Angeles. In 1963, Doherty established a friendship with Cass Elliot when she was with a band called the Big Three. While on tour with the Halifax 3, Doherty met John Phillips and his new wife, model Michelle Gilliam. A few months later, the Halifax 3 dissolved, and Doherty and their accompanist, Zal Janowski, were left broke in Hollywood. Elliot heard of their troubles and convinced her manager to hire them. Thus, Doherty and Janowski joined the Big Three. Soon after adding even more band members, they changed their name to the Mugwumps. The Mugwumps soon broke up also due to insolvency. The Mamas and the Papas song Creek Alley briefly outlines this history. Janowski went on to join the Lovin' Spoonful with John Sebastian. About this time, John Phillips' new band, the New Journeyman, needed a replacement for tenor Marshall Brickman. Brickman had left the folk trio to pursue a career in television writing, and the group needed a quick replacement for their remaining tour dates. Doherty, then unemployed, filled the opening. After the New Journeyman called it quits as a band in early 1965, Elliot was invited into the formation of a new band, which became the Magic Cyril. 6 months later in September 1965, the group signed a recording contract with Dunhill Records. Changing their name to the Mamas and the Papas, the band soon began to record their debut album, If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Ears. Relationship with Michelle Phillips: in late 1965, Doherty and Michelle Phillips started an affair. They were able to keep it secret during the early days of the band's newfound success. When the affair was discovered, John and Michelle Phillips moved to their own residence, and the band continued recording together. Eventually the group signed a statement in June 1966 with their record label's full support, firing Michelle from the band. She was quickly replaced by Jill Gibson, girlfriend of the band's producer Lou Adler. Gibson's stint as a Mama lasted 2.5 months. Due to fan demand, Michelle Phillips was allowed to rejoin the band in August 1966, while Gibson was given a lump sum for her efforts. The band completed their second album by re-recording, replacing, or overlaying new vocal parts by Michelle Phillips over Jill Gibson's studio vocals. After a continuing string of hit singles, many television appearances, a successful third studio album, and the groundbreaking sociological impact of the Monterey International Pop Festival in June 1967, an ill-fated trip to England in October 1967 fragmented the already damaged group dynamic. Cass Elliot quit, after a stinging insult from John Phillips, but returned to complete her parts for the group's overdue fourth album. By then, Michelle Phillips had given birth to Chynna Phillips and a formal statement had been released, announcing the group's demise. After the breakup, Cass Elliot and Doherty remained friends. After the band's breakup, Elliot had a hit solo show. She eventually asked Doherty to marry her, but he declined. Doherty released a few solo LPs and singles. Of note are 1971's What You Gonna Do? And 1974's Waiting for a Song. The latter LP went unreleased in the US and featured both Michelle Phillips and Cass Elliot on background vocals. The recordings would be Elliot's last, as she died a few months after the record was finished. Doherty was stunned and saddened to hear about her death in 1974 at age 32. He and John and Michelle Phillips of the group attended her funeral. In 1982, Doherty joined a reconstitution of the Mamas and the Papas consisting of John Phillips, his daughter Mackenzie Phillips, and Elaine "Spanky" McFarlane, which taught and performed old standards and new tunes written by John himself. Doherty produced an off-Broadway show called Dream a Little Dream, which was a narrative of his perspective of the story of the Mamas and the Papas. It was well received and garnered favorable reviews. The show was in part a response to John's PBS documentary Straight Shooter, the true story of John Phillips and the Mamas and the Papas. It featured music from the group and focused on his relationship with Mama Cass. It was, he said, to set the record straight. In 1993, Doherty played the part of Harbour Master, as well as the voiceovers of the characters, in Theodore Tugboat, a CBC television children's show chronicling the lives of vessels in a busy harbour loosely based upon Halifax Harbour. In 1999, Doherty also played Charlie McGuinness in 22 episodes of the CBC television series Pit Pony. Doherty appeared in the Canadian TV series Trailer Park Boys, Season 7 Episode 10 as FBI Special Agent Ryan Shockneck. Filming was completed just shortly before his death in early 2007. The episode ended with "This episode is dedicated to the memory of Denny Doherty." Death: Denny Doherty died on January 19, 2007 at his home in Mississauga, Ontario, from a second abdominal aortic aneurysm after going to get the first one repaired. A documentary on his life was made shortly after called Here I Am, the title song written with blues guitarist James Anthony. His interment was at Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia. Personal life: Doherty had 3 children, a daughter, Jessica Woods, from a brief first marriage, and a daughter, Emily, and son, John, by his 20-year marriage to his second wife, Jeanette, who died in 1998. His son, John Doherty, was temporarily in the Canadian ska punk band, Il Scarlet. Currently he plays guitar and provides backing vocals in a band called Trouble and Daughter. See also: Canadian rock, music of Canada. References. External links: the official Denny Doherty website, Denny Doherty at the Internet Movie Database, Dream a Little Dream Doherty's narrative of the Mamas and the Papas, CBC obituary, Denny Doherty at Find a Grave.